Okay. Good evening or good late afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to welcome you all to this Zoom meeting and to thank the presenters, Jenni and Helen, Jenni Cassidy and Helen Harrold from Dumox Learning, and Michele Holmes from Homeschool Directive. Just to explain a little bit about how we will proceed. First of all, Jenni and Helen will do a short presentation which will take about 20 minutes. That will be a PowerPoint presentation on their offerings, and that will be followed by a discussion with Michele, who will explain a bit more about the transcripts and how that works and the offerings that Homeschool Directive has. And then questions will be saved for the end. If you do have questions as we go through, it would be great if you could put them in the chat, and I will be looking at the questions to pass them on to the others, because obviously that will be difficult for people to be reading questions while talking. And if you can see I'm not sure if everyone can see the previous questions, do try to maybe avoid asking a question that has already been answered or has been asked already, so that we just can save on time. We expect it to be about 1 hour, so we would be aiming to finish by 6 at the latest. Anyway, thank you all for your participation, and I will hand over now to Helen and Jenni.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jenni Cassidy. We're really excited to look at this group of people, so many. Thank you, Michele, for getting everybody together. We're excited to share with you what we're up to with Dumox Learning, and if we can help you somehow, and answer any questions about anything to do with homeschooling, really, but especially about further education. And as Michele mentioned, the other Michele will talk more about the high school diploma. We say the Michele with 2 L's and the Michele with 1 L. I'm just going to share screens because we've got a few slides, just to hopefully make it a little bit more interesting and also keep us on track of what we've got to tell you. Bear with me 1 second. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. My only difficulty, which I didn't think of, was anybody in the waiting room, because I'm not sure if I can see the waiting room when I'm sharing screens.
You can, I think so.
Oh, really? Will it come up?
I think so.
And if you have your doorbell on, you can hear it ring when somebody comes to the waiting room.
Okay, hopefully it will become clear. So first of all, just a little bit about us, so you know where we're coming from, our experience, and how almost this whole Dumox thing has come about. Helen and I both have 7 children each, and I've just got 2 left that are still homeschooling. Helen just has 1. So we've lived various places, our own family. We've lived abroad, we've lived in Austria, we started in Scotland, we've been in Ireland, and we've always followed an American high school diploma program, like a high school. It's a school in America, but we've done it distance learning, and our children have achieved a high school diploma at the end of it. So we like to, oh good, I can see the waiting room. We like to bring our experience and help others. As Michele mentioned earlier, it's like you feel like when you're beginning that it's the blind leading the blind. You don't really know what you're doing. And I actually had Helen slightly ahead of me, and she was always my go-to, and she knew so much more than I did. And it's always good to have that experience, and knowing that myself, it's such a pleasure to be able to pass that on to other people and help them too. So we started really because it wasn't available to us and for our children, organising some teachers to make it possible for our children and some other homeschool families that we help mentor through the program that we do, to make it more available to them to be able to do APs, because as many of you will know, and as it's similar over there, getting into university is a whole different ball game for homeschoolers, unless you want to do the exact same thing the kids are doing in school. And of course, that's part of the beauty of homeschooling, that we don't have to. And we found that APs are a really good fit for university applications. So we started putting on a couple of courses the last couple of years, that we've had a few more as we've gone along, and now we're launching into 11 new courses starting in August. So maybe Helen, you could introduce yourself and explain something more. Sorry, let me just go back to that one.
Yeah, hi. Very excited to be here as well. So yeah, I've got 7 children as well. And you've probably heard of like the British system and the GCSE system, and we didn't really like that. I suppose we felt that we were doing something as crazy and as radical as homeschooling, and it was, you know, my oldest is 28, you know, so you know, when we were actually started doing it, he was about 8, so we started doing it about 20 years ago. So there were, I think in America there was a lot of people homeschooling them, but in the UK, you know, there were very few people doing it. So, and I think we felt if we were doing something as crazy and as radical as homeschooling, then like, why would we want to be doing, you know, this British system that was very constrained? So we looked at, you know, we were kind of looking for options, and then we were living in an international community. We heard about the American diploma, and we just really liked it. We really liked the fact that it wasn't the British system. You tend to do about 7 or 8 subjects, and then for the kind of the A-level bit, the kind of 16 to 18 bit, you tend to do 3. And we like the breadth of the American system, so that we just thought it seemed a much better preparation. So we started doing that, and we embarked on that. But then as our kids get older, we kind of then we're thinking about universities. Not that, you know, everyone has to go to university, but some of ours, you know, did show that they might want to do that, but then they didn't have the high school diploma, wasn't enough to get into university, or certainly not to a lot of universities. So we started looking at, you know, what else we could do. And as Jenny said, that's how we came across the AP exams. And you know, they work. They, you know, they're a way into university. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and explaining how that works. Okay, so it's complicated, and I think the first time that you hear it, I think you've almost got to hear it several times. I used to think it was my, you know, specialist sort of subject about all this, and I find that there's the easiest way I find to explain it is that there's almost 3 pillars to it. So there's the high school diploma, which is one section. There's the SAT, which is another section, and there's the APs, which are another section. So the HSD is the high school diploma, and the APs, it stands for advanced placement. Could you just go back a bit? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so there's kind of 3 components to the whole thing. And for British for American universities, you're probably, though again, it's almost like nothing's fixed in this kind of world anymore. So what I said in the past, for the American universities, you needed the high school diploma and the SAT part of it, but that's almost kind of changed now as a result of COVID. So that's kind of not definite, but they're kind of a good idea to have. For British universities, you're probably, for a good British university, you're certainly going to need the APs part of it, but kind of like perhaps the high school diploma and the SAT. I think we've decided with our family that we wanted to sort of almost cover all bases, and we wanted to give our kids almost like, we didn't want to kind of be at a point that we'd think, oh no, I wish we'd done that exam, or we wish we'd done that course. So we've done it all. We've done the diploma, the SAT and the APs, and we thought that was a better way to go. But so what I'm going to do now is explain, what Jenny and I between us are going to explain these kind of 3 sort of strands, but almost like to have it in your head that there's kind of these 3 separate things, and they are separate, but yeah, it's not even as simple as that. It's just complicated. There isn't an easy way to understand it all, but hopefully we're going to do our best. Okay, so Jenny, do you want to, shall I say?
Yeah, well, I mean, the high school diploma, just to explain that, and as we've said, Michele at the end will talk more about the high school diploma because that's her expertise. But basically how a high school diploma works, it's your 4 years of high school, so from grades 9 to 12, which is, are you familiar, I forget that people maybe aren't familiar with grades and the American system. You're talking roughly ages 13 to 17, am I right in saying that? Thinking
18.
ages, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
17 or 18. And we've given just an example here of a high school transcripts. I think you can get, for myself anyway, I know, seeing it visually there as those 4-year blocks. I hope it's not too small to see, that each grade you have a list of your subjects that you will have done. Each of those subjects will be 120 hours. Michele is the expert on this. I should leave it to you at the end, Michele. And basically you're getting a grade for every one of those subjects, and at the end you're going to have a grade point average. So it's not based on exams like the normal UK system or often other systems, but it's based on all those subjects that you're covering and what grades you're getting for them, and the point system that's carried through that. I don't know if I explained that very well, but anything else you would say about that, Helen?
Just that they'll differ. So you could do your high school transcript with different people, and you know the requirements. So it said there that some compulsory subjects, different places will have different compulsory subjects. So your high school diploma can look quite different depending on where you do it and whether your child's bright or academic or very sciencey or really into history or really into languages. So it's going to look different. But you know, I'm sure Michelle's going to explain a lot more about that.
Helen, do you want to?
Yeah, so and I think we sort of said some of this already, that it's broader than the UK qualifications. You might do, so if you do you could choose to do a course that has an exam at the end. So you might have a high school diploma that's made up of a lot of exam subjects, or you might not. So it could all be done by coursework. So you as the parent are going to be assessing it, going to be giving the grades for it, or you could pay for a tutor and the tutor could be given grades for the courses. There's a lot of flexibility. Okay, there's just many ways to do it. Vocational work, practical work could be included. You know, you could do a lot more of things like drama or art subjects if that's what you want to do. So there's a lot of flexibility in it.
And so it's so suited to home educating because of that flexibility, right? That's one of the beauties of being able to home educate and not have kids in a classroom necessarily. So do you want to do the next bit?
Yeah, so the next bit, so that's the high school diploma bit. So that's the the bit you do, and you do that from 14 to 18, and then concurrently you do the SAT and the AP. So the high school diploma bit is 14 to 18, and then the SAT part is the next part to it. So the SAT, it's organised by something called the College Board, and that's the kind of, if you're familiar with the British system, they're like the AQA or the Edexcel. They're like the kind of the ones that oversee it. They also oversee the AP. So the College Board, you can like Google the College Board, and you sit your SAT at a centre. It's usually going to be your local posh boarding school or private school. It's fairly easy to find a test centre for the SAT. It's all gone digital as of internationals. It's all digital as of March this year. It's a reading test and a maths test and a grammar test. So the maths is kind of based on like whatever you've done in high school. It's reading comprehension, but it's not passages. It's not like you've got to study Macbeth or something and then you're asked questions on that. It's you're given some unseen passages and then you answer questions on it. And there's a grammar section, so lots of writing sort of sentences where you have to sort of change a particular word or say whether there should have been a full stop or there should have been a semicolon. So it's like a very sort of general test. You can certainly study for it. I mean, you can certainly improve your grades a lot through studying for it. It's quite a, I don't know, studying really helps. The highest score is 1600. It's all multiple choice. There's an essay section, but you don't have to do that. And you get your results in about 3 weeks. No, you do the SATs, You do, it happens about 5 or 6 times a year, something like that, multiple times a year, the SATs. So the next one, there's one in May coming up. I'm doing a course at the moment for the SAT maths prep. So there's one in May and there's one in June. I think the next one's in September.
And you can take them more than once, right? So if you want to
Sure.
improve your score, or you feel like you didn't do too well or something, you can repeat them and use the high score that you get.
Okay, so that's the SAT part. So we've done the high school diploma bit, we've done the SAT part, and now the APs part. Okay, so it's accepted as equivalent to an A level. So this applies to a British university. So for a British university, it's accepted as equivalent to an A level. The plus is that it's only a 1-year course, so it's an easier course in terms of content because it's only 1 year, but it's equivalent to an A level. So it's like a complete win-win for a homeschooler in the sense you've then got more time to do anything else you want. You know, you've just got more space. My son did one yesterday, so my son did a macroeconomics test yesterday, and it's a 2-hour exam that he did, and it's in May. So this week and next week are all the AP exams. Finding an exam centre for that tends to be more difficult than finding an exam centre for the SAT. But I believe there is one in the UAE that people have used. And it could be used, so you could use your AP on your high school diploma as well. So say you did an AP, say for example, my son is doing an AP in macroeconomics, he's also getting high school credit for that as well. Or he's doing an English on Tuesday, he's got his second AP this year, and he's doing that in English language, and he's also getting credit on his high school diploma for that. So it can be used for both. The other thing with an AP is that if you go to an American university, then you can also get, so to go to a British university, you need, for a good British university, some you don't need them, but to go to a good British university, you need probably 3 APs. To go to an American university, you probably don't need APs unless it's a very prestigious American one, but you will get, I forgot the word, you will get college credit for it. So you will get time, or it will give you credit towards your degree if you do an AP. So my son, same son, is going off to America, and he will have 4 APs. So he will actually get 12 college credits for those APs that he's done. So he'll basically get kind of time off or some credit towards his degree. So I find it quite odd, I suppose, that he does this AP exam and he gets high school credit for it on his high school diploma. He gets the AP and he also gets time off his university exam, which to me just, I mean, it's very un-British. You just this very different sort of system, but you can do this one thing and you can get like three pluses from doing one thing, which I think, yeah, it's very different. It took me a long time to get my head around this. And then how to kind of know kind of what a university requires. So they're just all different, so whether you're wanting to go to university in America or the UK or Australia or Germany or UAE, it's just not consistent. And in the same country, they're going to have different things. Different universities in the same country are going to say different. So check the university, speak to the university. You're going to perhaps be going to university with unusual, as a homeschooler, you're unusual, and perhaps you've got unusual qualifications. So we found speaking to the universities very, very helpful, and they're very receptive, and they've been really receptive to these exams. But whether you're applying wherever in the world you're interested in going to university, then find out what that university wants.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter, I think, of searching for some universities that you think, oh, maybe they could go here or there. Just look at the international requirements and it will tell you exactly what you need and what subjects they are, and what's the requirements for that course. Just to mention that we've got some, we want to tell you about specifically what we do in Dunmox Learning, is that we do have regular enough SAT prep courses. So, a course maybe between 8 and 13 weeks, or they vary, but to prepare for an SAT exam. So we're offering those courses, and we're also offering mainly AP courses, and we've had a couple of other things. We've got an IGCSE that will be starting after the summer as well, and maybe some different things along the way. But our main thing that we have to offer is our AP courses, and we've got some amazing teachers. Some of the students in the picture there, some of the UK students that were just taking exams at the moment this week. We've got some from the States, we've got some from the UK, we've got a mix of people that will be there with APs and teachers already, and you know, we do really have an excellent selection of teachers, which we're really excited about. We didn't expect to have so many good ones so early on, which is great. And there's our list of the APs that we're offering this coming school year. We hope to expand the amount of subjects that we do, but as a start, this is the ones that we are offering. Yeah, we call those SAT short crammer courses, so they wouldn't be a whole school year to prepare for an SAT with a class, but they would be shorter courses. But of course the APs are for a full school year. Do you want to mention, Helen, what's
Sure.
included in that?
Yeah, just, I mean, you know, when we were trying to, you know, find and, you know, teachers, there were several people that we asked, and they said yes, and we were like, really? Like, seriously? Like, we just, I mean, you know, for example, the guy that we got teaching the statistics, or the guy we got teaching the European geography, we were just so amazed and so thrilled that they were going to be teaching for us. We were just, yeah, couldn't believe it. So yeah, we really are delighted with that, you know, the quality of the teachers, you know, and I think we're homeschooling parents. You know, my son is, you know, because I've got one, you know, he's going to be doing these courses. You know, we want to provide good quality we want our kids to be doing these courses, you know, so we want to be doing a good job, you know. It's, and you know, the program that we use ourselves in the UK, we're both consultants for that, you know, so we set this up really, you know, to try and help those families initially, but you know, that's not, and we've kind of widened it, you know, so we want to provide good quality classes. So what we're offering is 30 live Zoom classes. We want to offer live classes. There are lots of APs around that are not live. We want them to be live. We think it's just better for the pupils that it's just not a recording that they may or may not listen to. You'll get a book list. There'll be weekly marked homework. We're going to use Google Classroom and Zoom. We're going to do a practice paper. There's going to be email contact with the teacher, and we're going to try and feedback to parents every 10 weeks just to make sure your child is on track and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's what we're trying to do.
Just to mention the pricing there, if anybody's interested to know about that, of course, go to our website, the dumoxlearning.co.uk, if you haven't had a look at it already, and see all the details about each of those courses, what's involved in the course, what you might need before taking the course. Some of them need something to be studied beforehand, others you can go straight into without doing that subject at all. So please do check out the website. We've also got a Facebook page and an Instagram. You know, please follow us and share and everything else. And that's the information there. Yeah, we can accept deposits just to hold the place for the class. And yeah, that's all for this next coming year. A few frequently asked questions before we get the questions. And then we'll address these, and then we'll, you know, if anybody's got any questions to put in the chat box, we'll maybe let Michele speak first and then take any questions at the end. Do you want to go over those, Helen?
Yeah, so well, we spent a long time going backwards and forwards about names, and people do think it's a bit of a strange name, but you do probably remember it. So there was a famous saint called Thomas Aquinas, and he was very, very brainy, but people didn't think he was brainy, and he was called the dumb ox. So that's why I call it the dumb ox. And we did think, like, with it a bit like people think like dumb, that's not very good because we're educating people, but there's that whole course of something for dummies that we thought, oh well, it's been done before, so we went with that. our course is Christian, we're Christian. On our website, we've expressed it more eloquently than I think I'd be able to do it now. So we are Christians, and that's very important to us. So our courses aren't Christian because they're AP courses, and AP courses aren't Christian. So the courses aren't Christian. I do think it makes a difference to how we approach the courses, perhaps. Not for, I'm teaching microeconomics, it doesn't really make much difference to that. It does make a difference to English literature. So, and we've just explained a couple of books that we wouldn't choose to use for literature. So if there was a book that had sort of certain immorality in it, I'd imagine that you might get some AP courses that might want to explore the themes in that book. I think we just wouldn't feel it was appropriate, or we would want to kind of go there, or that there is time, or it's the right environment. So I think we would steer clear of things like that. So it will affect some choices for something like English literature. And we've written something about biology as well. And we're not teaching creation or something. That has been one course, because for the AP biology, it takes an evolution viewpoint, and whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't really matter whether we agree with it or not. For the AP biology, you have to teach evolution, so that's what's going to be taught. But we kind of acknowledge that people may have different views on that, but for the purpose of the exam, that's what we need to do. Our course is AP approved. Several are at the moment, and we're in the process of getting the rest of them approved. And because they will be AP approved, you can put on your transcripts, you can put microeconomics, and you put AP after it on your transcript, because they will be approved from the College Board. Yes, in the future, maybe some other courses, but not yet. And the same thing. So in the future, I think we will be offering more sciences, but not this year.
And just to mention, Helen, I think you missed out that all our teachers are Christian also. So that's something that concerned people, that they'll be, they won't be teaching Christian things, but they'll be coming from that kind of viewpoint kind of thing. So yeah, that's the end of, I think, what we need to tell you about. So well, maybe we'll move on to Michele before we take any questions. If you want to start any questions in the chat box as well, feel free. And we go over to you, Michele.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Well, I just want to start off by just amazing how technology is today, that I get to be here. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. Helen and Jenni are so amazing. It's such an honor to be included in their circle, veteran homeschool moms who have walked the talk, and they've gotten their kids, to adulthood successfully. That's the goal of all of us. And I believe, like, you can study the APs on your own, but it is a trademark name, and you have to go through a licensed provider to get that AP on your transcript. So I just want to put that out there. So Helen and Jen, their organization has gone through all the proper channels. They get to use the trademark and everything. So they're a great resource, and they homeschooled, which a lot of other AP people, they don't necessarily homeschool. And it's just coming to the table with that background, picking them will be a great resource for you, because you could tap into their wisdom. So that's great. And Michele, thank you for including me here. I was talking to Michele, and I was asking her the question, like, where's this community from? Where's their backgrounds from? But she's like, they're from all over the place. There's some from the United States, some from Canada, some from the UK. That's your community is so diverse, which is an example of why homeschooling is so difficult, because we're all coming to homeschooling from different backgrounds, and we're trying to make sense of how to launch our children into adulthood successfully. And that's one thing that we all have in common. Even though I'm here in the United States, other people, Helen and Jenni, are in the UK. You guys are in Dubai and the UAE area. We all have one thing in common, that we are bold enough to homeschool, and secretly scared to death that we're going to mess up our kids for the future. And that, you know, if I don't get this last stage of homeschooling done correctly, they're going to fail as adults. And that's our worry and that's our fear. But that's where Homeschool Directive comes into play. And so just a little bit about myself. I'm just going to tell you, you got this, you can do it. You can get your kids all the way through high school and help launch them into whatever their life goals are. I'm a veteran homeschool mom myself. I homeschooled for 32 years. I have 8 kids. I just graduated my last child in 2022. And, you know, I'm not proud that I homeschooled 8 children. What I'm proud of is that I got them all through high school and they all did it differently. Not one of them approached their high school years the same, which makes, you know, you get you through your first kid and you're like, oh, I got this figured out. And then the next one comes along and does something totally different. And so that's where the United States transcript comes into play so well. And I also worked with, I kind of feel like this is a co-op day. So I ran a co-op for over 20 years. I launched that into a nonprofit. It's still going on today. And this feels like a good old, you know, sitting in the hallway, talking to other homeschool moms and reassuring them that how you homeschool is the right way for your family. And getting a high school transcript would be a wonderful way for you to share what you're already happening in your home with the world. So that's the goal. I launched Homeschool Directive a year ago when I was reaching out to my community of other business owners and asking them how I could help their community. And I've already was helping people homeschool all the way through high school. That's always been my goal. Our co-op of over 200 students was always at the high school level. And so that was always really important to me. So no, going into Homeschool Directive, we're not a franchise. It is founded by a homeschooler who has helped hundreds of other homeschool parents homeschool all the way through high school differently. And that's where we're at today. Each of your homes, how you're homeschooling is different, and you need an organization around you that can take how you homeschool and turn that into, as Helen and Jenny were talking about, that transcript model. And so I'm going to talk about some nitty-gritty things here just to get them out of the way. We do require 30 credits. I know Helen and Jenny were talking about some prerequisites. We do have a 30 credit graduation requirement, but with that, there's flexibility. With our organization, you get to pick your curriculum. So one of your students might be doing APs, and then you might have another student, maybe they're doing an AP in math. And you might have another student that has dyslexia, and they have math dyslexia, and they can't work at that higher level of maths. And so that's the beauty of a flexible transcript model where a math credit is required, but it's totally based on the child's learning style and their educational goals and needs. Even though we have these requirements, we're flexible enough to be able to take what they are doing and apply that and help them move forward. I think when we're getting to this high school level, sometimes we change the mode of how we homeschool. Like when our kids are younger, it's like, oh, this is fun. We can experiment here. We can do these things and this will be fun. And it's all about the idea of alternative education. But once our kids get 12, like all of a sudden we want to start checking off the boxes and saying, we got to do this and it has to be done this way. And if you, heaven forbid, you talk to 5 different homeschool moms, it's going to be 5 homeschool different ways. And all of a sudden we get these insecurities and we're like, we're not sure. And you know within your heart and your being that you're supposed to be doing this. But again, as I mentioned earlier, if we don't do it right, they're not going to be able to launch into adulthood successfully or get into a university or whatever their ultimate goals are. So I'm here to reassure you that you are doing what you are called to do with your family. Homeschooling, a homeschool parent's job is not to fill their kids' heads with a bunch of information to check off boxes. Our job is to create children who love to learn for the rest of their lives. Our job is to create lifelong learners. And pardon?
You want to take them out? Yeah, I'm
Okay.
good.
So our job is to create these lifelong learners, and I'm here to encourage you to continue in the path that you're already going, but use the United States model because there's so much flexibility. As Helen and Jenny were talking about, if you have a child that is very academic, they want to go to a top tier university, either Oxford in the UK, or if they're wanting to go to Cornell in the United States, or they're wanting to go to a top tier university in Dubai, they're going to need to have a little bit more things on their transcript. They're going to need to have an SAT score. They're going to need to have those APs. But what do we do with those children who have test anxiety, or they're very, very creative, and they're going to be art students? And what do we do with those? Do we treat them the same way? Well, sometimes if you enroll into an umbrella school, you have to treat all of your children. They have to kind of do the same thing. Homeschool Directive allows for that flexibility. So each student can really customize that educational process towards their educational learning styles and what their life goals are. And so I wanted to keep my presentation a little bit on the shorter side, just so we had more time to talk. Another unique thing, I know 30 credits scares a lot of people, but we do offer 4 different ways to earn a high school credit. I know Jenny mentioned 120 hours. That is just one way. That is just one way of being able to earn a high school credit. And so we do have a family fee. I'm just going to do the pricing really quick so we get that out of the way. We have a family fee that's $500 for the year, $50 a student fee. And that when you enroll your family, you're locked into those fees, even if our fees go up the duration of when you're with us. So your fees will never go up. And when you're comparing us to other umbrella schools, it's almost like trying to figure out how to homeschool. Like, we all approach it differently. And so some are a la carte, and our program is all inclusive. You're going to see some umbrella schools that are a lot more expensive. That's because they include curriculum. So again, it's not something that we can just do, an apple to apple organization and try to figure out, if I'm going to do an umbrella school, what's the best fit for me? What I can reassure you is that Homeschool Directive is flexible, and we can meet your need with where your family is at. So I think, if I want to say, I'm keeping track of time, and we're already at 8:42. So I know we wanted to end on the hour. So Michele, did you have any questions in the chat, or? And you're on mute. Okay.
Hi, Michele. Yeah, I'm just going through the chat. Thank you so much for what you've just said. It was really, really reassuring to hear. I mean, as you have mentioned, it's quite daunting for all of us, and the fear that it's a cookie cutter approach, I think a lot of people are often concerned about. I'll just go through some of the quick questions that were mentioned. So there was a question about, and I'm not sure if you would be best placed to answer this, about whether, if a child does an AP and it's on the transcript, will this end up leading to them having lowered fees at university or graduating early? When it's described, so it was described by Helen as helping to add to the college credits. What exactly does that mean?
So Helen, did you want me to take that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so when you're dealing with APs or dual enrollment, some of my kids went right to our local university and took classes. Again, it's going to be on what your goals are. So some universities will give you college credits. Some universities you'll want to go in as a freshman and have the whole 4 years experience because their program is designed around that. Like if you're going into a nursing program and you might choose not to go in as a sophomore a second year, like because if usually a typical freshman first year, I know university is different in the UK than in the United States, but from the United States standpoint or even the UK, getting issued those credits sometimes aren't always in your children's best interest because they need to be in the program, whatever program whatever program that they're choosing to do. In some of my kids' case, they graduated university when they were 20. And that had its pros and cons. Like really, when my first daughter, I didn't think about all the cons of her graduating college. And I know that a lot of us are Christians and stuff, but she couldn't even drink. Like she couldn't even go socialize with her peers because like she couldn't even get into some of the things that all of her friends were getting to because she was only 18 or 19. So when we get to the other side of graduation, it's again, what is in the best interest of that student? If you're going to apply for Oxford, it's right on there that a homeschooler has to have 3 APs. What they're going to do with those APs at the other end of the school, that's a conversation between you with the student and what's in the best interest of the student. I mean, of the best interest of the university. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So some colleges might look at what you've already done and might here in the United States, financial aid and scholarships is a lot different than in the UK. And so here in the United States, we're all about getting as much money as possible. And there are different ways of getting scholarship money. If you have almost a perfect score on the SAT, you're going to get a lot of more money on an academic scholarship. But that doesn't rule out for students who get, like a lower score. There still might be some money there, but the schools are kind of limited. They have to have, let me put it this way. All the universities, think of them as businesses that want to have an end product, and they're looking for a student to be able to not mess up their statistics at the other end of graduation. And I'm gonna this is like just like bare bones understanding, right? So a university like of Oxford, they have the standard of students that they have an outcome for. It's a very heavily academic. It's those students. Now, the problem that we forget to talk about in the homeschooling arena is that a school like Oxford or a school like Cornell here in the United States, 70,000 people applied to that school. They only accept 4,000. Now, all those students applying deserve to be there, but why did they only pick those 4,000 students? So they're going to look at your high school transcript and the way, is my microphone still working?
Yeah.
Okay. And the way that you look more interesting to the admissions office is to see if you're a well-rounded student. I think that that's why the United States method of being more liberal arts, that you do have 4 credits in science and you do have 4 credits in physical education, because you weren't just studying for a test and becoming this person. When you're homeschooling, you're homeschooling the whole child. It's a lifestyle. And that's what you want to convey to these people who are making these judgment calls on your students in a matter of minutes. And that's what we forget to talk about. So we need to check off the boxes if you're applying for university, like an Oxford, and you need those credits and you need a certain SAT score. Doesn't guarantee your student's going to get in there because they have 70,000 students that's competing against them. But our portfolio and our transcript is going to show them how unique of a student you are. And depending on what they're looking at, one of our students got into Cornell. She happens to know exactly what she's known since she was 4 years old, that she's going to be a farmer, and she niched down. She knew she wanted to study vermiculture and study grapes, and she's a harpist. And she just must have had all, and she never took an AP, but she is almost a perfect score in an SAT. She had these. So again, it is individual, and you want to portray the child that you have in your home and what's best for them. So that was my long answer to does this university get? I'll stop there.
There was another question about grading. Someone wanted to know whether or not Homeschool Directive does any grading.
Okay, so we don't personally grade because we're not doing any teaching. And I know for people who have never had grades, and this was struggling even for me when I was first starting doing a transcript in my own home, was how do I honestly evaluate grading, and how complex does it seem? I want to reduce that really down to that every teacher, even if you were in the United States going to typical classroom situation, each teacher comes up with a set of requirements for that class, set of expectations. It might be coming to class every day, asking questions, could be all a part of that grading system. And so what we do at Homeschool Directive is that we help you create, especially if you're designing your own class, like when you're taking a class with Helen and Jenny, it's really easy. Like, you go to the class, you show up, you do the homework, and if you take the test, like some things are really easy to see if it's, but you can get an A in Helen's class on our transcript and do poorly testing, but still get that, which you won't with Helen. They'll do a really good job preparing your students, but let's just say, right? And so all grading is a set expectation. So we encourage parents, whatever is important to you, if you're designing a class or even outsourcing that class, you come up with this criteria. And if they meet it, that's how you evaluate them. So grading is an evaluation system that is designed by you. And if they meet all those expectations, to me, that's an A. And trust me, I had some kids that did not get A's because they complained to me about doing math. They didn't show up on a weekly basis to get that math done. And even though they finished the program, it was drudgery for us, and they only got a B+. So because requirements for me is blatant showing up in your willingness to participate in the learning process. So again, it isn't always taking a test and at the end of those tests, because what happens if we're giving you a grade? Let's say you're going to travel and you're going to do a missions trip, and you're in Australia and they're doing a missions trip for a month. How do you grade that? How do you grade that? And we're going to put it on your transcript as maybe depending on what they did there when they were overseas, it might go under geography. That's another way that's our 30 credits are easily attainable, is that we allow integrative study. So we can take one topic and apply it to more than one educational branch.
Okay, I think you've actually answered one of the next questions, which was a brilliant one that I'll just read it out because it's quite,
okay.
They were asking if you could use an activity or experience towards more than one subject on the high school diploma. For example, if you did photography and took photos of microscopic objects, could you then use that towards both a photography credit and a science credit? And I think you may have answered that, but maybe you can just clarify.
Yes, 100%. You can do science and you can write research papers during the science class, and that can be part of your 4 credits for English. So you can, and this isn't, think about at the university level here in the United States, they go abroad all the time during the summer and take a 2-week class, and they get a whole semester of credit for it. So we're not doing anything that they don't do at the university level, but we can integrate subjects together. Let's integrate maybe cooking with chemistry the science of chemistry, of cooking, that can be combined. You know, somebody's love, they're going to grow up and be a chef, but they still have this 30 credits to do. They're not planning on going to an Oxford top tier university, but they still need to have chemistry. So how do we do that for them? So we look for their interest, and they would get an elective in cooking, and then they would get a science credit for if they were to do a chemistry of cooking.
Okay. And then there was another question about whether there are any required subjects at the Homeschool Directive. Do you have any minimum, like do they have to do, I guess that means math and English, or are there any other things that absolutely have to be on the transcript?
Well, English requires 1 credit in structured writing. We want to make sure that the student knows how to write an essay, how to do a research project, how to, diagram, like write proper sentences. So that's important. And then our maths, we require 3 labs. So it can be any maths, but we want hands-on learning, like you were talking about doing photography or microscopic. Like I would consider that a lab, because that's kind of cool, right? Like, so those are our requirements. Our requirements are our 30 credits. We just have a little bit of flexibility, because the question comes up, and this had to happen. I didn't have a son that he couldn't read until he was 12 years old, and he's going into high school. Not the same ability where my oldest daughter was reading when she was 3, and she was reading, high school level by the time she was in 4th grade, right? What did I do with him? Like, that was my first question, is like, what does high school look like for him? There is remedial work that can be done during high school and be given credit for it. Remember, we're moving our children forward. We're not holding them back. We're just continuing at the high school level. And this boy who didn't read until he's 12, he's married now, 3 kids. He has his master's, and he's in a VP program for the work at the company he's at 33. So, but I think it's because he never felt like he was held back, or he wasn't good enough. We just kept saying, this is who you are. You're going to need study skills. Like, it's harder for him. He needed to learn. That's pretty much during high school, was organizing his executive skills. I think if you would look at our credits part, we do require a life skill and executive skills. We require 2 credits in that, because we want.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could you just give an example of what you mean by a life skill and so what was the other one?
Okay, so we require a life skill or an executive skill, 2 credits in that. And our goal with that is that, can your students get to university and budget? Can they manage? Do they know how to wash their own clothes? Like, if you look back as adults, when you were launched into adulthood and you had the skill sets, the ones you didn't have, those would probably be the ones that you would want to work on with your kids. They're individual between families, because I'm not really sure what's important to you as a family, but every parent usually goes, okay, I know I want them to be able to launch into adulthood with these certain skills. Executive skills were really important for me. I wanted my kids to know when they got to university, they knew how to withdraw from a class if they needed to. If I have 2 daughters, I have with dyslexia. One is severely dyslexic. She needed to have the executive skills to manage her own disability. That meant when she launched into the university, she knew how to get the services that she needed on her own. Like, she needed to have this executive skills, right? Or managing their own schedule and making what's their expectations of their own week. We have a student planner. We encourage kids to use that. And so, as you can see, we're working on the whole child, not just checking off the boxes of maths and sciences. Those are the easy things. Getting them prepared for adulthood and being on their own is really, really important.
Okay. And just one more thing. I think there were a few questions about the SAT age, the age at which one can do this, and then also I think there's a bit of a question, or maybe some clarification needed. I'm not sure if Helen or Jenny want to chime in on the ages for the APs. When should one start them? And also something about the number of APs that one should do, depending on the institution. So we've heard everything from 0 APs necessary to 3 APs to people doing, I've heard of some doing 7, or even I think I read somewhere online about someone doing 14 APs. Why is there such a big difference in the numbers?
Okay, should we make this the last question, because I think people are yeah, I'm just trying to start on the chat. Yeah, so if you want to go to a particular very super academic American university, then you might need 7 to 10 APs. If you want to go to a British university, you're going to need somewhere between, a good British university, you're going to need somewhere between 3 and 5 APs. So somewhere, and when you do them, so my son is going to be in 10th grade next year, he's going to do his first AP next year. So you're probably going to do, you know, split over. You could do 1 in 10th grade, 1 in 11th, or 2 in, my other son's done 2 in 11th and 2 in 12th, you know, so something like that. If you, the SAT, again, you're probably going to do it first of all in 11th grade. If you want to redo it, you're probably going to do it in 12th, but, you know, there isn't, you don't have to do it in any particular time. You might want to wait until 12th grade to do it. So, you know, towards the end, you know, so, but you would do it concurrently with the high school diploma. So I just, you know, I suppose that, you know, there people are, I think there may be more questions that people want to ask, but I suppose I'm just kind of aware that people sort of, you know, do want to go, but
exactly.
you know, and you know, but please do get in contact with, you know, with ourselves and with Michele. I mean, it's you know, as I said, it's not an easy thing to get your head around, because it's so different. We've all grown up in an education system, and it's, you know, it's a different education system. So you know, so do please get in contact, you know, with any of us. You know, we're very happy to you know, to help, you know, to answer questions.
And if anybody wants to put their email in the chat box there, I can access the chat box afterwards, so we can email you if you want to be on our you know, mailing list. That we won't bug you, I promise. We won't send lots, but every now and then we'll have some kind of updates, and we can let you know about them. I just wanted to say, well, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity, but I just really want to encourage everybody, because I remember that, you know, when the kids were younger and you're really thinking, are we doing the right thing? And when you have a hard day and you're struggling with the kids, or they're not cooperating with some kind of bit of schoolwork you're trying to do, and you're questioning, are you doing the right thing? It's only really when I found, once that first child graduated, got to university, coped at university actually way better than most people seem to cope, was well able for the studies. They've not all gone on to university, but I have three at the moment, that one of them's got 2 degrees, he's doing his master's, but they really they thrived, and they did really well. And it wasn't overwhelming for them. I know every family and every child is different, but I think that we need to recognize, and I see it more and more, the more people we know that have homeschooled their kids into adulthood and beyond, and now homeschooling their own children, and the more, you know, because we've been in it so long, I'm sure Michele will say the same thing, when you see your own children and other people's children being such well-balanced, incredible young people, adults, having their own families, having their own children, and just, you know, knowing that homeschooling them had a huge effect on all of that, and never regretting it for a second, was, I think, when they're tiny, it's hard to see that big picture. But just to assure you and encourage you, because it really is such a worthwhile thing to do. And when you're hearing all these little details about credits and subjects and whatever, try not to get overwhelmed by it all, but to know that you're doing the right thing, and it really is an exceptional way to educate your children. And I think more and more universities are recognizing it, and places of employment are recognizing it. The experience I see with my kids, especially the Americans, because they're more familiar with homeschoolers, they're starting to see that they're the people you want to employ. They're the people, because they're independent thinkers. They're, you know, they can think, they're not just in a system that's going to churn them all out in a certain way of thinking that I think it's really evident to me, and I'm sure to you, to Michele and Helen, that it's really is the right way to go, and just to encourage you in that. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that for so long.
Oh no, but I want to piggyback here a little bit what Jenni was just saying about what an example that you're giving your children right now of being bold to choose alternative education. And, you know, you might say, well, but it's because I live here and it's my only option. No, like taking on your education of your own children is such an empowering thing, that you're being the best version of yourself for your children. They're watching you figure it out as you go, and you're really setting them up for what they're going to be doing in the future, being able to pivot, ask the right questions. We're going to keep asking questions until we get this figured out. So congratulations to all of you for, you know, getting to even to this point of having the conversation about, okay, how are we going to do this through high school? And that's what a good example that you're already giving your children. Like Jenni said, on those bad days where you're like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Like, really, I'm sitting here arguing over, like, I tell my kids, you have to do algebra. You want to drive a car that can kill people. Like, let's talk about these like dynamics of like learning. I'm not asking you to do a whole lot. So get on with getting your math done because you want to get out of this house and grow up. So
it's not an easy road, but it's so anything worthwhile is worth doing, and hard work, and you know, it's.
And I do have to say, being here on the other side, I have 12 grandchildren, they're all being homeschooled. Being on this far side of the homeschooling movement of starting back in the 90s, there's no greater joy. Like my kids have accomplished amazing things. Like they speak like 12 different languages in my house. Like they've done amazing things. But getting here, the most thing that I'm so feel privileged about is how much time I got to spend with my kids. That was the beauty. That's what homeschooling gave me, more time with my children than most people get to spend with their children. So remind yourself, even on those bad days, that I get to be here when they're hormonal, like on a daily basis. And so that's what I'm most excited that homeschooling gave me, was more time with my children.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Michele.
Thank you very much.
Michele,
I just wanted
Thank you,
just
Michele.
to finish off to say that we really thank you all, the three of you, for giving us this time. Thank you so much, Michele, for that reassurance. You know, it's the end of the year, or the end of the academic year is soon to be upon us. And I think a lot of us are feeling tired, worn out. And when you mentioned showing our children our best selves, I kind of laughed because I thought about how sometimes we don't always end up doing that. And I'm sure we've all been there on those days where we are pulling our hair out over math or trying to get our children to do various things. And so it's just really amazing to hear the three of you talking about coming out the other side, emerging, you know, victorious after trudging through what sometimes can feel like a very difficult experience, and just to remember those positive things, because when you're in it, sometimes it doesn't always feel on every day that it's positive. So thank you so much for those words. It was really helpful, and the session was incredibly informative. We got a lot from it, and we will keep in contact with you and continue via email, the WhatsApp group that I created, or any other channels to communicate. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
God bless.
See you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.